Welcome back, guys. So we're going to be talking about my 2025 NBA mock draft. This is obviously all before the lottery rankings come out, I believe, on Monday. So just a little bit of fun, get a good idea. It's my first one. We're going to just see where this thing goes. There's going to be no trades, pretty standard. Whatever teams get, that's what they're going to pick at in the lottery. And so, yeah, let's see what the lottery sims for us. And then with these are lottery results. So, Hawks at 14 via Sacramento. Oh, dang, they lost the fourth pick to the Spurs. You have Bulls 13, Mavericks 12, Blazers 11, Rockets via Phoenix at 10, Spurs again at 9, Raptors 8, Nets 7, Hornets 6, Wizards at 5. That's kind of a steep fall for them. And then the Spurs at 4. That's a crazy jump up with that. So I'm sure Atlanta is not very happy losing their pick in this I guess type of sense in this lottery. I mean, obviously we don't know, these aren't the current lottery results that I think gets published on Monday night. I think they come out. So I'll probably do another mock draft when that comes out, and then that'll be the continuous types of mocks that I make, obviously, because that's the real. And then we'll probably keep doing it as the playoffs kind of keep going to see what picks might get where. But Spurs jump up. Wizards are probably not too happy, dropping a little bit. Hornets the same. Nets are probably a little upset as well. And then, so for our lottery results, Sixers at 3, Jazz at 2, Pelicans jumping all the way to 1. I'm sure Pelicans are really happy there. Jazz probably not too upset. And Philly's probably really excited about their results as well, jumping up all the way to 3. And then, so with the Pelicans with the first pick in the NBA mock draft, obviously it's a no-brainer for me. It's Cooper Flagg. I don't think you really question anyone else in this type of sense. I think no matter who went to pick one, even if you're the Jazz and, you kind of have Markin and Walker Kessler, I still think you go Flagg. You find other things. You don't really think anyone else. But for the Jazz in this situation, I'd probably go Dylan Harper. I think it just makes a lot of sense. Like I said, you kind of have all those other pieces. Your guard situation isn't the most figured out yet. I think you still have a lot of good pieces, but I think you could land that kind of dominant one, just because Flagg's not there for you. And with the 76ers jumping up the 3, I'd probably go Ace Bailey. I know it's probably maybe not the greatest fit for Bailey himself, but I'm sure the Sixers would be so excited to get someone like him. Obviously, Paul George and Bailey may be a little similar, but that could be a good learning experience for Bailey, too. It's not too bad. It's a long-term replacement. And then with the Spurs jumping all the way up to 4 via Atlanta, I have them going Derek Queen. Very controversial. I would love to hear some opinions on this. I would consider Malach or Edgecombe, but I don't love the fit for really either of them. I think Malach is kind of too similar to Wemby in a sense, and Edgecombe, I don't want to add another guard to this big guard situation. So Derek Queen kind of offers you a center power forward kind of versatility. And I feel like the way that the NBA is kind of trending, we're seeing so many more dual centers. But they can't be exactly like each other. They'd be a little bit more, diverse from each other and whatnot. So I think Queen, in a sense, it's definitely a reach, but this is a no-trade kind of spot. I mean, I think if this were to happen in real life, the Spurs jump up that far, I think the Spurs should look to trade down, just because I think you can get Queen later. And then with the people that are, kind of left on the board, I'm not too sure. I love the fits for those types of people to go to San Antonio. And then with the Wizards pick at 5, I probably think about going Malach here. I was thinking Edgecombe, but I feel like you have a lot of guards who've shown some flashes, and I kind of like the idea of maybe adding a Saar kind of front court, where you could have both those dual centers. Like I said earlier, there's so many more teams kind of focusing in on that dual centers. We see some of the top teams like Cleveland and the Minnesota have these 2 centers, so I feel like this could be a good idea and a good fit for the Wizards long term, while you still kind of give that leeway for some of their younger guards to try and develop in this sense. And then with Malach being off the board, I have the Hornets going VJ Edgecombe. I thought about maybe switching the 2, but Edgecombe is still on the board. I actually would love this Edgecombe pick for Charlotte, just because you could have Edgecombe kind of pair nice and next to LaMelo at that kind of front or backcourt kind of spot. Edgecombe is, he's not a point guard. He's not a true ball handler like LaMelo, so I think it is a good fit between the two of them. And then with Brooklyn being up on the board, I have them going Kasparis, Jonas. I'm not too sure they're happy with the way the board fell to them, but I think Jonas is still a great pick, and he could easily fit into that, I think, new future view that they have for the team. It gives them a primary ball handler. He's a good piece. He's, not the best scoring, but he's got great vision, and Jonas could be that long-term point guard there in Brooklyn. Next, Toronto. I'm sure they're not too happy with the way the board has fallen. I know they're more center needy, but in this case, there's no trades. I have them going Jeremiah Fears, add another point guard, add a little bit depth. Quickly's hurt last year. Grady Dick is still great, but can kind of give you another bench option for the future. And then the Spurs, again at pick 9, I have them going Con Knuppel. Adds the shooting, you're kind of diversify that team, give them more spacing. Knuppel's a great shooter, and it's overall, I think, you don't want to add any more guards. You kind of already taken a center. So just get your, kind of wing that could shoot, and I think your offense, could look really great in the future. And then next we have the Rockets at pick 10. I have them going Colin Murray-Boyles, good defensive player, kind of adds a little bit of depth at that power forward position. Jabari Smith is a okay piece, but I think Murray-Boyles could also come in and kind of steal that spot. It just kind of adds, a little bit more depth to this team. It's basically like the rich get richer. They're so stacked in youth, so you kind of just keep adding to where I guess you're almost weakest. Then the Portland Trailblazers at 11. I have them going Trey Johnson out of Texas. I think Anthony Simons may get, traded this offseason. If that does happen, you need a replacement. Johnson could come off the bench. You're not really taking any dominant minutes away from Scoot. I'm sure they still believe in him there. Johnson's a great shooter, good playmaker. Kind of just overall solid piece. So if you do trade Simons, you kind of have that replacement. Then my next pick for Dallas, I went Jace Richardson, the point guard out of Michigan State. With Kyrie kind of being out, on a you don't really know when he's coming back. You kind of add to the point guard. You kind of have, your centers and big men kind of figured out. So you kind of just get a point guard. Hopefully he could work it out. You get Christie, Jace Richardson, and then, once Kyrie comes back, you could really have that, a good set point guarding group. Then Noah Essingay I have going to Chicago at 13. I think the Bulls probably aren't too happy that Derek Queen and Kaman went too, really early. And I'm not totally sure they're sold on maybe going someone like Thomas Sorber with his injuries and whatnot. So I think Essingay, kind of that power forward, small forward kind of versatility. I think it's just a good fit overall for the Bulls. There's no, center that you may love, so you can kind of just go in that other direction. Unless, like the Bulls, decide they want to maybe trade up or trade down. The lottery, definitely did not work out in their favor, at least for the centers and the picks-wise. Then I personally love this fit here for Atlanta. Asa Newell out of Georgia going to Atlanta. Another 6 big man. He's not like a pure center. He'd probably be a little undersized, although you may be able to get away with it. I think he's listed at 6'10". But Newell, I think, could, thrive with having Trae Young in his point guard. Kind of has some versatility. You can kind of see him coming off the bench. Jalen Johnson did have that injury last year. I'm not too sure if he's expected to come back or, what his return date is. I'm assuming he's going to be back, but in case not, it never hurts to have, a little bit of depth. And Newell's also a great player, so it just makes a lot of sense, I think, here for Atlanta. Then if I was OKC, I'd be a little upset Newell just went, but I think you could still swing with Igor Demon out of BYU. Oversized point guard, has some versatility. They have so much young talent. I think you can kind of take a risk and a chance on someone like Igor. So it just kind of makes sense on like where their team is. You don't really need to take a safe, quote unquote safe pick. So swinging on someone like Igor could be, either massive or it may not even affect them long term really at all. And then the Magic landing Liam McNeely, a wing that can kind of shoot. He's probably considered the second best shooter. He's had his struggles, but, outside of Con Knuppel, he's probably the better shooter, or second best shooter in the class, at least right now. Obviously everything can change and develop, but coming out right now, Magic have struggled shooting the ball from deep. So adding someone who may be able to bring a little bit more spacing and versatility to that offense could be helpful. Then this pick for me was interesting. I ended up going Thomas Sorber to Minnesota at 17. Definitely an interesting kind of, pick. I'm sure there's about to be a lot of comments on this. But Sorber, I think, is a great prospect outside of his injury. But Naz Reid does have a player option, so he could leave in free agency. And if you are nervous about that, and you want to continue to run that kind of two-man, game with Gobert still being there, I think Sorber's a great option there for them. And honestly, I think there's a little bit of a drop-off between, Kaman, Queen, and then, Sorber being the third. But outside of Sorber, I think there is another, slight dip in the talent for this center class. Then the Washington Wizards back up again at 18. I have them going Miles Bird. A little bit, like I said, you probably love to, not overcrowd your guards or, your center. So landing maybe a small forward like Bird, who's needs a lot of development, but could be a long-term piece there in Washington. Then going someone like Noah Penda here to Brooklyn at 19. You took Jock Uchonis earlier in the first top 10, and obviously with no real center, with Sorber being off the board, I'm not too sure how comfortable you feel taking, a reach on someone else. So I think Penda kind of adds a little bit of versatility. You kind of get a good piece, hopefully a safe pick, let him develop, and, that could be a star right there for Brooklyn. I mean, you don't want to overload, and try and take another guard hoping something works out, because you do want Jock Uchonis to, be able to get his reps and, not overcrowd the guard position with young talent. Then Nolan Traore going off the board to Miami Heat at pick 20. Kind of an interesting pick. Traore's had his ups and downs, I think, throughout this whole, kind of watching college prospect kind of coming out. He's international. He's had his ups and downs, but I think, going to the Coach Spo and the Heat culture, I think that could be a good fit for him. So I kind of like the scheme fit and him as a player. I think it just made a lot of sense. Then the Jazz up again at pick 21. Obviously, there's some solid guards still left up on the board, but obviously, you kind of have a lot of guards. You add Dylan Harper earlier. You go more of a small forward and Darian Williams at a Texas Tech. I think he could be a good piece. Kind of have him at that shooting guard, small forward versatility. At least that's what he's listed here, but I think he could be a good piece, defensive guy, and it just made a lot of sense for me here. And then the Atlanta Hawks back up again at pick 22. You grabbed Asa Newell earlier. Obviously, I'm not too comfortable taking or reaching on a center like Yaxel Lenderberg or Danny Wolf here for Atlanta. So I went with Labarian Philon. I think he could be a good complementary piece to Trae Young, or when he comes off the bench, he can kind of run, hopefully the kind of scheme. I don't know if he's a long-term piece there. He needs a little bit developing still. But I think it's a good pick. Don't overcrowd what you got there at your forward position, and you can still add a great piece for the future. Then the Pacers at pick 23. I have them going Carter Bryant. I would love, for them to maybe land a big man. But Carter Bryant, I think, can kind of fit that mold. You get a defensive, taller kind of guy. I think they have a lot of guard. I think their guard depth is pretty strong, so going someone bigger can be a good long-term piece. Just kind of makes sense from a GM kind of perspective. Then OKC, I have them going Rasheer Fleming. Obviously, they have so much talent there in Oklahoma City, and, they still have more picks. So I think someone like Rasheer Fleming, I know their centers, I would say their backcourt was a little bit depleted throughout the season with Hartenstein and Chet both being out. So I think just grabbing someone who, maybe not a center, but has some, you can kind of play your four. And I think it just makes sense. He's a great defensive piece. They're known for being a defensive team. Just kind of makes sense. And then you also have Ben Seraph going to the Orlando Magic, kind of taking a swing, trying to hit a home run kind of pick for the Magic. They're already kind of deep. They're a good team. But if you can land someone like Seraph and, he ends up panning out, I think that could be great for them as well. So it kind of just makes sense. Kind of shoot on that home run kind of piece and just see what happens. Then Brooklyn being back up on the board, they have back-to-back picks at 26 and 27. I have them selecting Ryan Kalkbrenner first. You weren't able to land Sorber earlier. He was off the board. Obviously, you landed Jock Uchonis with pick 6 or 7. So I think adding, some center depth and Kalkbrenner could be great for them. Kind of a, maybe a long-term piece, add some depth. We'll see what happens with Nick Claxton this offseason. And then with pick 27, I have them going Nick Clifford. I kind of like Nick Clifford. He's kind of a solid piece. He needs a lot of developing, but I've liked the flashes that I've seen out of him. And Brooklyn adding, they have so much youth talent coming in just off this season. I think you can kind of swing on that. Hopefully it works out. I kind of like the fit in a way. He's not going to be rushed in a sense, but he has some development to do. Then the Celtics being up at pick 28, I have them going Johni Broome, the center / power forward out of Auburn. I kind of like what I see of him. I don't know if I would love him on a lot of teams, but with the Celtics, I think it kind of makes sense. I think he has some good touch in the paint, but when the way that they use their centers, I would say now they're more able to shoot a little bit, and Johni Broome has showcased that a little bit from his tape, to where I think it kind of makes sense. He's not going to be a day one starter, maybe not even a year two starter, but he does add some depth and kind of, weird center room I think that they have now. I'm not too sure what the long term future really is for Al Horford, but I think Broome could definitely come in, learn a little bit. I think he kind of is, shows some similarities of what they look for out of their centers. So I think grabbing him kind of makes a lot of sense for Boston here. Then the Phoenix Suns up at pick 29, I have them selecting Will Riley. Good piece, needs some development. You can spend some time in the G League. But he's going to get some time. I think that'll be beneficial for him. That Suns roster is looking a little not bright for the future. So adding someone like Riley, I think, could be a good piece for them. And I have Danny Wolf going to the Los Angeles Clippers at pick 30. I kind of like this. I mean, Wolf is kind of used to playing a two-man game there in Michigan. I think it kind of makes sense. Zubac gets a lot of minutes. Wolf needs to develop a little bit, but he has someone to learn underneath. And eventually he can come in, be that depth piece. I mean, if they really want, they can kind of work that two-man game, if that's something that teams want to start considering the success that, Cleveland has had running it this year. Same with Minnesota. So I think maybe grabbing someone like Wolf, could be beneficial. He's kind of used to it, and you kind of just develop, see where it goes.